English news and a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome to the East-West Show. Jack Chow is hosting. The East-West Show is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry with 400 years of glorious history and hand-forged by 10 generations of the number one craftsman on earth. Together, the name of Wolfers stand for a testimony to the spectacular and the share of the royal glory. Back to the show today. Today with me is my dear friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, former candidate for California Assembly 49th District, and currently he's the chair of LA County Probation Committee, right? And he's been serving 27 years as a Santa Monica PD officer, and 27 glorious years, I would say, and retired and walking into directly the community projects helping the needy people right away. One of the programs that he was engaged in so many years was the Food on Wheels.
Actually, Meals on Wheels.
Meals on Wheels. Meals on Wheels program of the Queen of the Valley Hospital around as a center. At that area, within the vicinity of that area, though, lots of people are being beneficial to that program. And also, he's been a commentator to the political life, I would say a day-to-day political life of Southern California, and a dear friend of myself, and a dear friend to the show.
Thank you, Jared. It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So last week, you were here for the event.
Yes.
Right? And last week on a Tuesday, we had an event celebrating the 1,370 shows so far accumulated at this table with the east-west, from the east to the west. And Mr. Joe Gardner was one of the VIPs. I call them VVIPs because they are very, very important to the event. So how did the event impress you?
Oh, I was honored. It's a privilege to work with you. All those many months, Jack, and doing the show, and I was grateful. I learned so much, and you gave me a voice to speak to the community, and I want to congratulate you on that 1,370 shows that you've done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know for sure the credit goes to all the guests, VIP guests, community members, and our audiences. Without them, there is no show at all. And also for EDI, we are appreciative for having built this platform so that everybody can play, right? So, to the subject for today, after Thanksgiving, with the rain which has had, and the rain we're expecting, the weather says gonna be next two more days.
Right.
And with the rain, the temperature gonna drop.
Yeah.
Which immediately makes the worry about our folks on the street. I mean the homeless people. So I would use this opportunity to make not a constant call, but an emergency call at this time that we got to do something. We need to do something to rescue those folks in the cold. So you've been with me on the subject for so many times, so many times, right? What's the latest update?
Well, you're right. We've had a lot of discussions about homelessness, and this year, I think, and it started last year, I think, is when we first began to really see California have a season, right, where there's rain and snow and cold. And so now this is the second year, where we're not in a drought condition, where it's going to be very rainy and cold, and we have 60,000 perhaps homeless people on the streets of LA County, and that's a lot of people who are going to be weathering the cold conditions and are going to have to endure that. And unfortunately, some of those folks we're going to lose to, hypothermia, all kinds of conditions that normally are associated with cold weather. And so you're right. I think we're at a crisis level. I cannot understand why the government hasn't taken the action they need to and declare it an emergency. To get resources in place.
Surely, yes,
and
yes.
So my hope is that they do something quickly, because if, God bless the rain, we need the rain, but if it continues through this whole season of winter all the way through the beginning of the year, we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be in some dire conditions.
Yeah, you're right. Even though winter in California is not as cold as the other states, such as Montana, right, with lots of snows. With winter, with temperature dropping, quite below the below 0 degrees, right? California is cold enough. It's cold enough, even if you do not have the snow.
Right.
So suppose if you are on the street, you are exposed on the street with no roof, no walls around you. Well, I would say next thing you see that you die.
Yes. And unfortunately, as a police officer, that was one of the things that always struck me hard, is when I worked the streets and was dealing with homeless issues on the street, and during the cold season, there'll be those times that I would find people, deceased in doorways and in places that are like on the freeways and various locations. And it always struck me hard to see that maybe this person really didn't have to be in that condition. And it's tragic to see a person that you may have had contact with a week before, and then you come, in response to a call, and you find them deceased in a doorway.
All
Very
of a sudden
tragic.
they die, right?
Yeah, cold and, just the hard life of the streets.
All right. And I would say it's the hard part of life that we have to face, right? It's a reality. And no matter or regardless how rich America can be, but we have that. We have that on our back.
Right.
We have that on our face, right? I know that they have, you have a lot to blame them, but to the point that they are human, like you and I, like everybody else, though. They deserve something. They deserve some kind of care.
Absolutely. Many of them, and we look at some things like cancer and tuberculosis as serious diseases, but we don't look at acute addictions to alcohol or to drugs as illnesses, right, that need to be fixed. Mental illness is another example, right? We don't look at people in the sense that they have a disease that needs to be cured or treated. And so we tend to look the other way, or we walk around instead of stopping to help. And, that's a real tragedy. I think, the homeless stigmatized view of what society thinks of people on the street needs to be changed.
The way I look at this, I wonder if you agree with me. Some patchwork, all kinds of patchwork will not help.
No.
Right? You have to go to the rudimental point, right? To the very, very, very bottom of the problem, to take care of the problem from that level.
Yes, and
Do you
sadly,
think so?
Yeah, unfortunately, those who are in government or in the bureaucracy look at it as a housing first kind of approach, but they in their effort to build housing that's very expensive, they overlook the very basic thing that you just hit on, and that's the underlying issue, that they have to be treated, they have to be cared for. If they have an addiction, they need to get into some kind of a treatment program first before they can transition to housing. Same with mental illness. You need to treat the underlying root cause. and give them the medication they need so that it could be
It
stabilized.
is really a problem, and the problem is worsening
Yes.
with the cold weather. Right. Now that Thanksgiving is gone, but Christmas is on the way. In between Thanksgiving and Christmas, those are the hardest times. Mm-hmm. And those are the happiest times of Americans too, yet those are the hardest times. My dear friend, my lovely audiences, today with me is my friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, a former candidate for California Assembly, 49th District, a former PD officer for Santa Monica, and current chair of Probation Committee of LA County. We're talking about the homeless issue. We are making an emergency call here. Instead of a counseling call, we're talking about versus the weather, the temperature dropping after the rain, and with the rain expecting, and we really got to do something. Anyway, so stay with us. We'll be right back, please.
Le bijou icône de Philippe Wolfers qui date de 1902. Il faut la regarder contre la lumière pour avoir toutes les couleurs de ce bijou qui est extraordinaire. Avec les opales, c'est un thème très à la mode, à la période Art Nouveau. On voit en argenterie, mais aussi en peinture. Et ça a à voir aussi quelque chose un peu symbolique. Un libellule, c'est très belle quand on la voit de loin, mais quand on l'approche, c'est comme un dragon en anglais. On dit un dragonfly.
C'est une des grandes figures de l'Art Nouveau. Et cette pièce, mieux que n'importe quelle autre, témoigne de sa virtuosité. L'opulence, le raffinement, les courbes et les couleurs, et puis le thème aussi, qui raconte une époque. Libellule a été réinterprétée, plus légère, mais c'est bien à son aïeul qu'elle fait référence, une pièce désormais accessible à tous, puisqu'elle est passée de la boutique au musée.
Hello, dear friends, lovely audience, and my dear brothers and sisters, my dear fellow Americans. Welcome back to the show, Jack Chow on the East West, which is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry with 400 years of glorious history and hand-forged by 10 generations of craftsmen, the master of the craftsman on earth. Together, the name of Wolfers stands for a testimony to the spectacular and the share of the royal glory. Back to the show. My friend Joe Gardner is with me today. We're talking about the homeless issue, which is a long, everlasting issue. However, at this moment, we would like to make it an emergency because people are dying. Right? People are dying every passing minute with the cold out there. Let's do something. Remember last show, 2 shows, when we were talking about the homeless issue, you mentioned the letter. And the second show, we discussed the letter. Right. And then I want to find out some follow-up with the letter. Did you send a letter out?
Yeah, in fact, I sent 2 letters out. I sent one to the President of the United States asking him to intervene in the state's issues as far as how they mobilize to fix the homeless problem. I also sent letters to my elected official here in the district, and the 48th Assembly District, and also sent a letter to the governor. And I urged them to really consider declaring the problem we have with homelessness an emergency. And I gave them some insight. Whenever I write a letter, I don't just simply send a letter, but I also provide some solutions. And so I did provide them with a template, a little concept, which is not anything unique to me. It's a concept that's been talked about by folks that work in the homeless field, like Reverend Andy Bales from the Union Rescue Mission and many others. And I had, as a police officer, had an opportunity to see what worked and what didn't work. And so I really kind of put all of those concepts together on some paper and sent it to them, and basically asked them to really declare this an emergency. You know, this is, I think, these are strong words, but I think we're at war.
Anything came out of the letter?
Not as of yet. I know the president's a busy man.
It's more than 1 month.
Right.
I believe, right?
Right. I've never received a reply. This was last year, earlier this year, probably about 3 months ago, and I still haven't received a reply from my state
Have you
official.
received anything like a notice, say, we are in receipt of your letter, and the subject matter is being considered or something like that?
Not at all.
As a courtesy note?
Nothing.
Not at all.
Right. Now I could, I have to give the president credit because I wrote him a letter on an immigration issue, and surprisingly, he sent me a nice letter back. And I was very touched by his letter, and it told me that he was willing to
You
look at
planning
them.
to repeat sending the letter?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's appropriate because somebody needs to tell them, somebody needs to make it clear to them that they must act. They can't let this continue to fester and be a problem as it is now. So,
Speaking of the letter, though, I owe my audience a little explanation that Mr. Joe Garner wrote a letter in the name of the community to give an overall picture of the problem, of the homeless problem, and also offer some solutions. That solution is so unique that it doesn't cost us any money to implement, which means that, for example, in Southern California, there are 27 of the air base of old naval air base left over.
Air Force as well.
No use at all, right? At the time when they were flourishing, they had everything on the base. They had housing because the families are there. They have schools, they have hospitals, clinics, so on and so forth. On the base, you're talking about literally a little city. It has everything. And there are 27 of them. Mr. Joe Garner is writing a letter, or has written a letter to the President of the United States, because that is federal land subject to federal approval to use it, to grant the usage of that land, of that property, of those property, to house those homeless people. That's the only solution. That's the cheapest solution.
Right.
Do you think so?
Yes, and you can, as we talked before, you can create partnerships with, the business industry, right? Maybe Home Depot or Lowe's would provide the material, building material to do the rehabilitation. You know, maybe a large company like Caterpillar might want to donate some, equipment that would allow the workers who are rehabilitating the facility to have graders and all kinds of machinery that could help
I
with
think in the
that.
meantime, though, probably you should combine the food program
Absolutely, right.
with that, right?
Retailers.
So with the Meals on Wheels programs, that's one thing, right? And also remember, a long time ago, we're talking about the waste food.
right.
About over 40% of food being wasted in the United States of America. If we can mobilize some kind of movement, some kind of campaign to save those food, though,
Right.
the food can be supplied there to the camp.
Absolutely. Yeah. Load the semis up with the food from the supermarkets that are almost near expiration and ship it to a place where you could feed people. And it happens all the time. It does take place, but I think more coordinated effort with building a facility to house the homeless would be
So it is
beneficial.
obvious with the housing facilities and with the food programs. Well, as a matter of fact, this hard to solve problem is no longer that hard.
No, it isn't. It'll take work, but its approach is very simple. I mean, we can mobilize the military during a time of war to set up bases and house and have hospitals, field hospitals.
Yeah,
Why can't we
yeah.
do the same for?
At taxpayers' money,
Right,
all right? At taxpayers' money.
I would be willing
Now
to pay
the
for
same
that.
taxpayer asking you that you abandoned those bases, let's put put them into some use.
Absolutely. Right.
That's something workable. So, what if I recommend that you send us this letter in a kind of like 2 letters every week? How about
Yeah,
that?
that would be a good idea because it's bound to get somebody's attention.
Finally, it might fall in somebody's hand,
Right.
right?
Right.
So let them know what's going on.
Right. I agree with you. In fact, I sent a letter to Mark Ridley Thomas, pretty much the same kind of letter I sent to the governor, the county supervisor, asking him and giving him the same thing, with solutions. I've yet to hear anything back, but maybe increased pressure of sending more and more letters would probably pique their attention.
Well, you know what? When you have no solution, you're looking for a solution, right?
Right.
When the solution is there, and it's so obvious the solution is working or will work, well, there's no reason why we hesitate and why we don't do it.
Yeah, I agree
Right.
with you.
It is very logic. Who else do you think that we can mobilize in making the calls?
Well, at the county supervisors, I think are essential because they are with the Measure H money that's been coming in now to the tune of a couple $2 billion. That money could certainly be put into some places like that we've talked about. So I think at the county level it's important for us, but also I think at the state, because it's a statewide problem, and actually to some degree it's a nationwide problem, but within the state, I think you really have to fund it from the government coffers in the state, Sacramento, and have them do what they need to do to make this problem go away.
I was thinking about how we can make a bigger call, make a louder call to the government, to federal and the state government, mostly to the federal government, right? Would that be a good idea to get the local non-profit organizations involved?
Oh yes, by all means. I mean, the more collaborative partners that you have involved in this and being vocal about it, I think is important. And Jack, you do a great job. EDI Media has, on community issues, has been very out there, And I think at a broader level, the media could play an important role of getting the attention of our elected officials. I honestly don't know why they haven't really paid the attention they need to at this point, but it's not because media hasn't done a good job at promoting the idea of fixing this problem. But I always think about that. How can we get this?
Get
People to understand this is important.
All right, my dear friend, my lovely audiences, let's take a short moment out. We come back to continue. Let's do some analysis. People blame them for them being lazy bones, bad guys, and rotten elements, or druggies, or criminals, or felons, so on and so forth, all kinds of names. However, there might be some reason to everything, right? Let's take a little moment out. We come back to continue right away, please. Hello, dear friends, lovely audiences, my brothers, sisters, dear fellow Americans. Welcome back to the East-West show that is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry with 400 years of glorious history, hand-forged by 10 generations of the #1 master craftsman. The name of Wolfers altogether stands for testimony to the spectacular and a share of the royal glory. Back to our subject today. For the homeless issue, we all know is quite a headache, right? For years and years, despite of so much efforts taken, of course there are lots of efforts, right? The things are still the same. And take Orange County, for example. 2 years ago, in the winter, in Orange County, they offered the hotel voucher programs.
Right.
That program for a while, like a month or something, on a weekly basis though, well, helped a little bit, yet so it didn't work.
Right.
So why, to your knowledge, why such efforts wouldn't work?
Well, the biggest problem that we face in this homeless issue is that you have folks that really are resistant to treatment and care. And it's not, it's because they are driven by their addictions, and they know if they go inside into a controlled environment, they won't be able to fulfill their addictions. You have mentally ill people who, without treatment, can be very paranoid. They don't like to be next to other people. And in fact, if you notice, some homeless people will stay away from others because they fear other people. And that could be a degree of mental illness that needs to be addressed. So the real challenge is that they don't like to go into the shelter unless they're compelled to go by the courts. And when that's done, oftentimes it's an opportunity for somebody to get a dose of sobriety for a period of time, so that they begin to realize that they can live in that fashion that they lived on the street, and that they should start accepting treatment and getting care for their mental illness. It creates stability. So, and that's a big challenge. If you were expecting somebody to go into these $600,000 or $700,000 condos that the county is working on building, you're dreaming, because you have to get them treated first so that they can be stable enough to go into that kind of an environment. And that's where the shortage.
Can we say this for sure? Correct me if I'm wrong though. Almost all of the homeless folks have some kind of bigger or minor conditions of psychological problems.
There seems to be a great percentage of those, and in my own experience, and it's anecdotal, it's just what I know from working on the streets for those 27 years, there's always an underlying problem.
Even if not to the extent of the serious level, though, right? But they have, big or small, more or less, some kind of mental problems.
Right. There's some degree of dysfunction there that keeps them on the street.
Even you come in a tough guy, right? With a blow after blow after blow, you may change from inside, right? So now that brings a subject exactly either to blame them or to help them or to rescue them.
I think, yeah.
That's three totally different ways.
Right, and that's very important you bring that up, Jack, is I don't think we look at homelessness and homeless people as more of a nuisance than to really realize at the core they're human beings that are troubled and they need help. And I think once society recognizes that and understands that there's a component of urgent treatment that's necessary, then maybe we can really change and really start helping people the way we should be.
But the problem is that right now we have more criticism rather than helping,
Yes,
and let alone cures,
right.
right? So, well, that is to say that unless you get to the very bottom of the problem, there is no solution at all. Take that one interview, for example. They interviewed one guy who refused to take the hotel voucher. And the exact word says that if I took it, I'll go for 1 week and I'll lose my spot, come back.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're territorial.
Right.
That's mine, that's yours, so on and so forth. When they go, another word, a temporary rescue would not help this kind of guy, right? And then at different levels, I know at the state and at the federal, they have the mental health laws, right? Made to help the folks who suffer from mental problems.
And you know, the problem with that is we create laws, but we don't fund the laws, right? We say, well, we're going to do this, and it's a good example is SB 1045, which is going to create conservatorships for the mentally ill, right? You take somebody, you put them into the courts, and the courts make a decision to send them somewhere. Well, the problem is you can't send them somewhere because there's no place to send them.
You're taking them
We
out
haven't
of the
funded
system,
that.
send or somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
Somewhere where?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big problem is you don't have the resources.
Like many, many years ago, downtown Los Angeles, they put them on truckloads and send them somewhere.
Right.
Somewhere where? Somewhere United States, right?
Yeah,
The problems are still there.
right.
The problems are still there.
And it's somewhere where I don't have to pay for it, usually is the answer. Because they
No,
don't
that's
want to fund it.
localism.
Right.
That's localism.
Right.
We're talking about, we look at the problem as an overall, it is our problem.
Right.
It is a common problem, the whole United States, right? Okay, now, back to the analysis. So, I put my stress on the emphasis that in between real lunatic and the people suffer from minor mental problems, there's a large group of them who are the ones going towards that direction slowly, right? With some help, it can be stopped. Right. So when I'm saying mental health, help to mental health, I'm not talking about totally medically. How about consulting?
Support, yeah.
Support.
Casework.
Talk to them.
Right.
Caseworkers, one by one, right?
Right.
So I don't know, when I say this, I feel hurt, right? Now you turn on TV, turn on the radio, you hear more criticism. They call them by names. Right? So, and from the bottom of their mind, though, you see a strong attitude that they are not regarded as equal as you and me.
Yeah, that's the sad part. It's like a caste system, right? You stigmatize them and you create them as less than you or less than anyone else, and that's a sad reality, and that has to change.
The problem is that we do not have 5 of them or 6 of them. We have 50, 60,000 of them.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's a big chunk of number, right? So that you cannot say, you close your eyes, you say, I don't see. No, they are there right away. Yeah. And especially in your case, when solutions are made, when solutions are found and written in a letter, recommended to authorities, unless they never see it. Once they do, there's no reason they don't do anything.
Well, the real problem is it comes down to money. And it's not that we don't have money. It's just you have a certain group of people or individuals who are not willing to pay the money. And we're talking about state politicians, we're talking about, county officials that look at the problem and say, oh, we can't afford that. If I have to pay for that, then I can't take care of this little pet program I have over here. But the reality is that you need to, they talk about investment, right? Politicians always like to use the word investment. Well, you should invest in fixing this problem of homelessness, because in the long run, it's going to cost you less, right? You're going to have less pain on the street.
Problem is that when there are solutions not costing money offered,
Right.
they're not considering it.
No.
They're not doing it,
No.
right? So, to me, if the federal bans a little bit, right, bans the rules a little bit, say, hey, go ahead, use those land. So the land problem, the facilities are resolved, right?
Right.
And then with the food programs, you're not producing food. You're collecting the food otherwise to be wasted.
Right, absolutely.
So with the food and the housing, the problem is gone.
Yeah. You've taken away all their arguments as to why they
See?
shouldn't fund it, right?
All right.
Or they shouldn't
Sure,
authorize it.
Sure. No money involved, all right?
Right.
Okay, my dear friends, lovely audiences, it really hurts me to go deeper to find out in the bottom why they don't want to do it. Something durable, very durable, and they don't want to do it. They keep it a live issue, well, as a stock for talking. All right. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, dear friends, lovely audience, ladies and gentlemen, my dear fellow citizens of the United States. And it is a national issue, especially in California. You're really talking about a California issue because we do have, take Los Angeles as a county, for example, 50 to 60,000 of homeless every single night. Every single night. Right. And the problem is that with the temperature dropping right after the rain and more rain coming, further dropping of temperature will happen. And we have a celebration coming, celebration of Christmas. We have a celebration New Year versus the cold weather. That makes us worry our folks of the homeless. So they are not species from other planet. They are same like you, me, everybody else. Right? My friend Chris Neby, director of Hollywood, he once told me when we were discussing the homeless subject, he says, well, why do I care? Because I could be one of them.
Right.
He could be one of them. So you had quite experiences with the Santa Monica PD, and during your time you dealt with them though. Do you think it is a human issue rather than a law issue?
Oh, I think it is. You know, I was struck, and it's a little story, and maybe it'll make sense in a moment, but one time we had to go, as police officers, respond to a person that was camping on a beach, parking lot. And when we got there, we found the man, and he had set up an encampment. And as we began to talk to him, he's a nice guy, a person that, you know, at any other time or place, you know, you would probably have a good conversation with. And when we began to discover, he had a gold ring. And guess what kind of ring it was? It was a Super Bowl ring.
Super Bowl ring?
He was a football player who got tied up in drugs, but he still managed to get the Super Bowl ring. And he was living in the streets on the parking lot. You know, because he had fallen on hard and difficult times. And you thought, wow, this man had so much talent. You know, another man, a college professor, he's a mathematician, and he was sleeping on the street. And, you know, once I heard his story, I was really struck by the fact that he really suffers from some severe mental illness, but yet he's a genius. You know,
Exactly.
He's a man out there fending for himself, but can't work his way out of this problem.
I remember I told my audiences the last time at the show, there was one time I was doing an interview downtown at the Our Lady Church, all right, because there was an event going on inside talking about homeless people. Mayor Viragosa was in power those days. I interviewed the guys on the street though. I came across somebody with a violin, and he even played for me a little bit. Wow. I asked him to play one song. He asked me for $2, $3, or $5. I did give him. He played well. And he was in one of the whatever, right? And he was in his life somewhere, somehow, tumbled over something, which he thought he will recover right away or shortly, which never did. And then another strike came, and another strike came, another strike came. Things are going worse and worse and worse.
Compounded the problem.
House gone, wife gone, job gone, everything. All he had is a violin and himself, and a bunch of problems. So the same thing could happen to every single one of us, unless you were born with a silver spoon in the mouth, though. If you are check to check, if you're living on check to check basis, you could be one of them, exactly like Mr. Chris Nibby says, right? So, to take care of the less fortunate is like I said in the very beginning, is a humane problem, not a legal problem.
Correct.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think you know, we gotta. If it should be a humanitarian response to help people. Once we decide once and for all that these are human people that need to be salvaged, that could be helped, then I think it can change. But until then, it's just a nuisance. It's just, you know, that person's just a problem in my neighborhood. And that's what has to change.
To go a little deeper into the subject, though, I found out that in history, there had been always the concern of the better off caring about the less fortunate, right? Do you have this kind of the same thing or similar, I believe, in every country's history? United States too.
Yeah, we suffer the same problem, sadly.
In China, right, about 1,300 years ago, during the Tang Dynasty, one poet named Du Fu, he wrote a wrote something which is nowadays still remembered, cited, quoted by people in China. In this little poem, he described his condition. He lost his little cottage with the roof, with a straw roof, because it was blown away. So in order to catch the straw, right, he traveled everywhere, pick up a few. Well, of course, the whole roof is gone. It's not one old man can do. And with the rain, with the cold weather, with the wet bed, with the broken quilt, the blanket, and everything, he thought his life, he described his life in a very, very terrible way. And all of a sudden, during the ending paragraph, he said this: could I get mansions covering 10,000 miles, I'd house all the poor and make them beam with smiles. In wind and rain, these mansions would stand like mountains high. Alas, should these houses appear before my eye, frozen in my unroofed cot, content I'd die.
Very nice.
So this is written 1,300 years ago by a Chinese poet. And 1,300 years later, it is quoted in English in the United States in an American language, English language show.
Yeah.
Do you think history sometimes is joking and making jokes?
I think so sometimes. And it's funny that you bring that up because, you know, we still have the same issues and concerns as maybe this man in the Tang Dynasty thought of so many centuries ago, right?
What we're talking now is exactly the same thing.
Right, exactly.
They're out on the street. This poor guy had a cottage with the roof gone. Right?
Right.
All right?
Horrible.
Those guys do not even have a cottage. They're on the street.
Right.
And that's 1,300 years later. Right? And in our history, I believe that in the history repeat themselves. Right?
Right.
And it was 137 something years ago. Remember, I used to quote the poem from Emma Lazarus.
Right.
Yeah.
And she lived 1849 to 1887. And you may recognize this once you hear it, but it says, "Keep ancient lands your storied pomp," cries she with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift up my lamp beside the golden door." And where is that inscribed at?
That's an echo.
Right. The Statue of Liberty, right?
Yeah, that's an echo, Statue of Liberty, of 1,300 years apart.
Right.
Or 1,000 years apart. Right? So, one from China, one from the United States, 1,000 years apart. Right?
Yeah.
And they are talking the same thing. Right? Why can't we, people of the 21st century, have some mind of mercy? Let's do mercy. Let's take mercy as an emergency word.
You're right, Jack. And this is a season of giving, and we always hear about it during the Christmas season that we should be more giving and more compassionate and more understanding. And of course, we should bring that up, and maybe this season would be a season of a new beginning where we actually look at people as individuals and treat them the way they should be, with dignity.
Exactly. Let's do something.
Right.
Let's do something before it's too late, all right? Let's save a life, one life at a time. How about that?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, very good. My dear friend, my lovely audiences, today I believe the show was successful because it is something that I have and my friend Joe Gardner shared the same with me for a long time, that we, the people, have to care ourselves, our own folks, our folks who are less fortunate. They are the homeless. Let's stretch a helping hand to them. Let's see how much we can do. We may not be big, our help might not be mighty, but a little bit is better than nothing. Is that right?
That's right, Jack.
All right, to wrap it up, I want to make it your call.
Well, folks out there, just have a great holiday season. Enjoy the season with family and friends, and let's think about others and help others.
Very good. Thank you very much, my friends. Thank you for watching. And Joe, thank you.
Thank you.